is talking through, and I've talked through the schedule before, but I want to give what I think is my predictions kind of for this season, right? If I look at the 2024-2025 Alabama men's basketball team, what would I say is a schedule prediction, a prediction on our final rankings, right? So, what is our conference standings? What is our non-con record? What's the record look like? And then also, again, we'll talk a little bit about what I think the rotation looks like. I have another video talking about who I think is going to start, so this is going to kind of bleed into that. But I don't want to go over that again one last time because I think my starters are still the same, but I think it's changed slightly with some information that we've heard. So let's go through that. Alabama plays 13 non-conference games and 18 conference games. In the non-conference, my idea of what I think a successful non-conference slate would be somewhere between, or would either be 10-3, 11-2, right? So when we go through the non-conference slate, we've got UNC Asheville, Arkansas State, McNeese State, then Purdue in West Lafayette, Illinois in Birmingham, Houston, Rutgers, and Notre Dame in that Players Era tournament in Las Vegas. The ACC-SEC Challenge, North Carolina in Chapel Hill in the Dean Dome. Creighton in Tuscaloosa, North Dakota at North Dakota, and then Kent State and South Dakota State to round out non-conference play. The games that are obviously going to be the most difficult, playing at North Carolina in the Dean Dome, that's one that obviously that's going to be a huge crowd. That's going to be a massive game. I think that Alabama can win. Obviously, Nate Oates has had some success against Hubert Davis, but that's going to be a tough game in the Dean Dome. Obviously, the first game of that Players Era tournament against Houston. Houston's always a tough team. That's one that could scare you a little. They're obviously a very, very good team with Kelvin Sampson. I was at the Houston game in Houston in the Fertitta Center a couple of years ago when Alabama had to come back from 19 down to win that game. Houston is a very good team and has been for a very long time, so that's one that they're going to play you tough. They just always do. Rutgers has two elite freshmen in Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, so obviously they have the talent. We'll see how good Rutgers is this season, but they definitely have the five-star talent coming in. Illinois, obviously going to be a good team, playing them in Birmingham, and then Purdue in West Lafayette. I believe Alabama should have the ability to beat Purdue. Obviously, no Zach Edey this season, but Matt Painter is a very good coach. He knows what he's doing. I think that Alabama, that's a possibility, obviously, for Alabama to win, but going to be a very tough game. So in my mind, I'm thinking 10-3, 11-2 is a successful non-conference slate. If you can get out of there with more than, of course, if you go 12-1, 13-0, you're absolutely thrilled. But I think if you can get out 11-2, 10-3, you're very happy with the circumstances that you're placed in. I think that obviously you have a very tough schedule again. On paper, maybe not quite as daunting as the 3 road games in a row that you had last season with Creighton on the road, Arizona on the, where you just had just a crazy on the road slate. So I think it's a little better this season, but obviously, we will see what ends up happening. Then in the conference schedule, the full midweek games and everything has come out. And so I'll pop it up here on the screen. But in my opinion, you need to win all of your home games, right? Defending home court in the SEC is most important. And then obviously, I think your toughest games are going to be a new look Mark Pope at Kentucky. I think that Alabama should be able to beat them, but obviously Kentucky in Rupp Arena is always a difficult task, so that could be a tough game. The back-to-back of Arkansas and Texas, I think that both teams in and out of themselves are going to be pretty decent, but I think that the back-to-back of those two, both being on the road, that's going to be a tough back-to-back. Thankfully, you do not have a midweek game that week before, so you have a little bit of extra time to prepare for the back-to-back. You go Georgia on February 1st and then Arkansas on February 8th, which makes it a little better because you're not, like I said, you're not doing the true back-to-back. You don't have a midweek game before Arkansas, so it makes it, like I said, makes it a little better. You get a little extra rest. And then at Tennessee on March 1st. That's going to be a tough game. It always is. And then at Auburn on March 8th. I think that potentially, if everything goes well, the SEC could be fully locked up before that March 8th game at Auburn. But one way or the other, obviously, Auburn's going to try to beat Alabama, even if they don't beat anybody else. That's the game that they're going to be ready for. So that's going to be a tough game. It always is. So like I said, in the conference slate, I'm looking at somewhere between 15-3 and 16-2. I think this team has that ability. I truly think that this team is one of the best Alabama teams we will have seen, and the last two top Alabama teams we've seen both went 16-2 in conference. So, in my mind, I think 16-2 is not unreasonable. Maybe dropping at Texas, at Tennessee, or at Arkansas, at Tennessee, something like that. My gut says maybe Texas and Tennessee, depending upon how good Texas is this season. Maybe you drop an early at Kentucky, at Tennessee. Tennessee is obviously a very tough team, just the way that we have played them over the last few years at their home arena, Thompson-Boling. It's been very tough for Alabama to play. I think that we have the physicality to match up with them. So obviously, my thoughts may change on that one, but that's been a very tough game for us over the last few years, just because Tennessee is the way that they get up in your grill on defense and how Alabama likes to play. They typically don't allow us to run the style we want to run. I think part of that's going to be a little better with guys like Chris Youngblood and some more guys that have real experience and have a better body, playing through contact and such. I think that we definitely have a better chance this season. Just that I think the team is constructed better, but Tennessee always plays us a very close, very tight game in Thompson-Boling. So, like I said, in my mind, I'm thinking somewhere between 15-3, 16-2. I think it's completely reasonable for this team. I think that Alabama is absolutely going to be one of the best teams in the SEC. I would predict them to win the SEC based on just who they have returning, who we have starting, who we're going to have coming off the bench. I think that this is going to be one of the best Alabama teams in history, in my opinion. So this is definitely something that I would look at. And then finally, I want to quickly go through rotation. Like I said, I do have a full video on this. If you want to check it out, I can link it in the description. But I want to talk a little bit about playing rotation. So my starters are Mark Sears, Latrell Wrightsell. I have Chris Youngblood as my starting three. I think that, and I've said this in the past, I do think that by the end of the year, it would not shock me if Darian Reed comes into that starting lineup. However, my expectation would be that to start the year, we have Chris Youngblood starting at the 3, and then we have Grant Nelson and Cliff Amore, right? So I think that's your starting 5. And then I think that I think that most guys on the team are going to get some level of rotation minutes. The two guys that it's toughest for me to see true, in-depth rotation minutes for are Nas Cunningham, just because I think that he's going to have to work on his body a little bit. I'm not sure how ready he's going to be for full-scale college basketball at this point. It would not shock me if this season he's more of very sporadically used, obviously in blowouts and stuff. I'm sure he might come in, but I'm not sure how much he's going to be used on a day-to-day basis. And then Mohamed Diabate. And Diabate is one that I could see him being used more, right? Diabate is a very good rebounder. He's very tough on defense, right? He plays a role, but with the guys that you have brought in being transfers, freshmen, and returners, if Diabate does not have a better offensive game this season than just going to the rack, it would not shock me if it's tougher for Nate to find him minutes than other people, right? I think that with having Brian Adams and having a true defensive coach this season and having a skill set, right? You have a rim protector, you have more true 4s and 5s. Diabate is going to have to be like a wing 3 or 4 that can't really shoot the 3. And like I said, obviously if he's worked on it a ton in the offseason, he comes out lighting it up. My opinion of this can be changed, absolutely. But if he's not lighting it up from 3 and 4 with the bodies that you have coming in and a true defensive mind, I think that it's going to be tough for me to see Diabate playing on a true game in, game out basis. Now, against your Tennessees, where you need like a real physical person, or maybe against Mississippi State, Chris Jans like to get up in your grill, play really physical, games like that, I could fully see Diabate getting extra minutes for sure. I just mean on like a true rotational mindset, it would shock me if he gets the same level of minutes as like a Jaron Stevenson, right? Jaron Stevenson's obviously going to be your backup 4, and I think he obviously gets way more minutes than a Diabate. And I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that. I think Aiden Sherrill is going to be obviously your backup 5. I think that having Aiden Holloway and, as we mentioned, LeBaron Philon both being able to play your guard position is going to be huge. Based on what Nate has said, he thinks that he looks at Aiden as potentially being able to play more of a Aaron Estrada mindset, but be a better shooter. And I think that that's absolutely a possibility. And if you get an Aaron Estrada, but a better shooter, like just the sky's the limit, right? Because I think that this team is absolutely has the ability to, as I've said, run 11, 12, 13 guys out there and always be fresh, always be with top talent, and you don't see the drop-off from starters to backups, right? The whole reason I talked about Mark Sears and Latrell Wrightsell being so important to last season's team, not just from a shooting standpoint, but as I mentioned, when Mark Sears and Aaron Estrada had to play 40 minutes, they had to play 40 minutes because the backups were such a step down, right? Your Davin Cosby's, and not to say they were terrible players, it just was a clear drop-off from Mark Sears and Aaron Estrada that Nate Oates did not feel comfortable leaving the backups in, so Mark Sears and Aaron Estrada had to play 38, 40 minutes in those games. Versus if you can have a Philon and an Aiden Holloway that are productive, right, and you don't see that drop-off, now you're comfortable playing Mark Sears 34 minutes, 32 minutes, right? Allowing him to get some extra rest, which means that the 32 minutes you get out of him are a little bit more productive than the 40 minutes where he's completely gassed the whole time, right? It's just the way that Nate Oates likes to run his system. If he can trust his players and he can trust their defense, right? If he can trust their defense and trust their offense, then Nate Oates is willing to play extra players. The problem we've run into in seasons past is either the defense or the offense is so inept that he has to keep the players he has out there, right? He just has to keep Mark Sears out there. He has to keep Aaron Estrada out there. Jaron Stevenson gets pulled in the Clemson game early in the season because he's just getting bullied, right? Jaron Stevenson didn't have the body ready for the defensive intensity that was happening on that end of the floor. And it was like, well, I guess we're just going to have to play Grant Nelson, or we're going to have to, we're going to have to play Diabate, or we're going to have to play somebody else because Jaron was just getting bullied by Ian in that game, right? Obviously, Jaron gets much better, and in the Final Four, he plays one of the best games of his career, right? In the Elite Eight, he plays one of the best games of his career to send us to the Final Four. So it's not that Jaron was bad. It was just Nate Oates couldn't trust him, and so he has to pull him. That's what I fully expect out of this season's team. I think that's the big jump that you see from last season's team and your 2019 team and your Brandon Miller team. I think that's the jump. Is Nate Oates now has guys where he can trust the second line to come in and not be at such a detriment. And because of that, that allows you to have the rotation, which allows you to stay fresher for longer, which allows you to be able to when other teams are and at the speed at which we play, we can just keep the pace running the whole time, right? If we can keep that pace up the whole time with the defense that I think that Brian Adams is going to be able to bring in, especially having the rim protector, with this team, the sky's the limit, right? So when I look at Alabama, my opinion is that you try to get to at least the second weekend, right? Most people say second weekend is the only thing that you can feel confident in when you're talking about the NCAA tournament. that obviously you may say, hey, I would love to be able to make it to the Final Four, but it's just not realistic to be like, hey, this team is Final Four or bust, because if you get a really bad draw or something happens, sometimes that doesn't happen. But a minimum second weekend is the floor for this team, in my opinion. I think that this team has the ability to go to a Final Four, absolutely. This team has an ability to win a national title with how they're constructed and how I believe they're going to play. Obviously, we will see how they actually play in November and in October when these exhibitions happen. And then, like I said, and then in November when the season actually kicks off. But I'm super excited for Alabama basketball. I have my season tickets. I will be at those games. So if you are interested and you like the content, please subscribe to the channel. Please throw comments down in the description if you have any questions. Like I said, if you would like to meet me, like I said, I will definitely be at those games. I'm obviously going to be at the Alabama-Georgia game this coming weekend. But thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and I will see you in the next episode. Peace.